Hey everybody, welcome back to Manga Mondays, the only manga review show that occasionally covers something that looks like it might be relevant or popular in the near future. I'm talking about that time I got reincarnated as a slime. A manga which was surprisingly relevant because by pure coincidence, I bought this manga on the same day that I bought Dragon Quest Builders, which is where, slimes come from Dragon Quest, so yeah, anyway, irrelevant. This manga is an adaptation of a light novel, which gave me a lot of hesitance in picking it up at first because not only do I generally have a negative opinion of most light novels these days, especially these like meta going to another world light novels, but also because generally manga based on other things tend to be shit. It's very rare that you get a manga that's based on a light novel that's as good as the light novel or as the anime adaptation, and it's rare that you get a manga based on an anime that's any good either. But I figured there's no way I'll ever read this light novel, and there's not an anime yet, and the book looks really nice. Like, I love the cover art, I love the blue wraparound aesthetic of it. It looks cool, it's a little thicker than normal. It just felt like such a well-treated release that I wanted to scope it out, and this seems like something that could easily become popular, so I figured I'd have the up and up on the memes for once. But anyways, most importantly though, it's a fucking story about a guy who turns into a slime. The main character is a slime, which I thought was a cool enough idea that it'd be worth checking out. So I picked it up. Now, the best thing about this story is that, of course, the main character is a slime. It's about a 30-something-year-old businessman, Japanese businessman, who gets stabbed in the street one day while protecting one of his coworkers, and he gets reincarnated in a fantasy world, like just a generic fantasy world, as a slime. And he comes to consciousness in a cave. He has no sight. He's just a slime. However, when he was in the process of dying, whatever force, which is referred to as the Sage, and it seems to have the voice of his computer, that's brought him into this world, gives him all these special powers. Like, he comes into this world with, like, whatever he's thinking about as he's dying is essentially interpreted into giving him powers that work in this world. And then when he wakes up in the cave, he meets a gigantic dragon, because it turns out he's been awakened inside of a cave where, like, the big, evil, king of dragons has been entombed for the last 500 years. And the dragon's bored because it's been trapped in this cave for a long time. So he decides to team up with the slime, and the slime consumes the dragon entirely, because that's one of his powers. He can just, like, consume things and then gain their powers. Now, what this setup has done is immediately done the light novel thing of giving us the most overpowered main character imaginable. Like, yeah, the joke is that he's a slime, which is the weakest monster in Dragon Quest. But, he's not. He's not a super weak monster. He's the strongest monster. Immediately. He comes to this world, not only are the powers that he gets from the computer insanely powerful, because he gains, he can eat anything, essentially, and gain its power, but then he also, the first thing he eats is, like, the most powerful dragon. So he's got, like, an insane amount of magical aura. He's basically the king of all monsters at this point. So he leaves the cave, and the first thing he does is he comes upon a goblin village, and he rescues, basically the goblin village is being attacked by these dire wolves. He rescues the goblin village from the dire wolves. They all pledge loyalty to him, and then they're seeking out a blacksmith, so he goes to this city and tracks down a dwarven blacksmith who's going to come back with them, essentially. That's the main thrust of what happens in the course of this book. It doesn't get that far in the overarching narrative, near as I can tell. But, yeah, the thing is that, again, like, we immediately are in a super, super overpowered hero who can solve all of this world's problems, even though he doesn't come from there. And granted, it's done in a somewhat unique way. I mean, I like that he's a fucking slime. He's a cute little slime. That's cool. But in the opening pages, there's a cold open where they show this cute blue-haired girl who we literally like see the slime transforming into her in the opening pages. It's foreshadowing for where the story's eventually going to go. So at some point, slime is not going to be a slime anymore. It's going to be a cute girl. And it's actually interesting to realize why they put this flash forward in there, because the most shocking thing about this book is that there are no cute girls for most of it. That's the one thing I could kind of give it, was that even though we've got an insanely overpowered protagonist who comes to this world, he does not immediately have a heroine fawning over him or anything like that. And he's an older guy, so there's that at least. But of course it's doing the thing where he's aware of all the cliches of the world around him, so he's kind of like, you know, having an easy time making sense of it all because it's just a video game world. But, yeah, granted, like, there are female characters. There's like some female goblins. Towards the back end of the book, there's a part where they go to like a cabaret club, and we get probably my favorite image in this manga. So it's not that there's no women drawn in it whatsoever, but a bulk of the manga, like the whole first chapter, is mostly just this slime and this dragon. And then, you know, he meets a bunch of goblins and stuff like that. Funnily enough, this is addressed in the afterword of the book. The author states that when they were converting it to manga, they had two big concerns. The first is that in the early part of him being a slime, he can't see, and he only slowly gains senses, which is represented thusly. And their other problem was that there's no cute girls, so they weren't sure if it would actually sell. And the only thing that gave them confidence that it might work is that they drew the slime kind of adorable. But they make like a real effort to advertise the fact that there will be cute girls later. Like, there's this whole little afterward part where it's the characters are celebrating the release of the book, but they're all like, oh, but there's no attractive characters, and they're foreshadowing like, oh, but don't worry, there will be attractive characters soon. And I'm like, guys, the fact that there were no attractive characters was the most interesting thing about this manga. The fact that this was just about a slime and a bunch of monsters hanging out was the best thing it had going for it. It was the most different thing. It was the most interesting thing. I just wanted to watch a story about a slime talking to monsters. The foreshadowing that it's going to become something like a light novel is exactly what turns me away from wanting to have another volume. Like, this girl on the cover is the legendary hero who had sealed the dragon hundreds of years ago. We only really get mention of her. The dragon keeps talking about how beautiful she is, and towards the end we see her in a prophecy that some girl has about the slime. So, like, she hasn't really made an appearance in the manga yet. And it's like, as soon as she does, she's going to be the heroine. Like, they've pretty much stated that in here. Like, it's like they're so afraid of doing something different that it's ruining itself by... Like, being different would be the only thing that I would want from this. But no, it has to be the same as everything else. So, let's drag as many beautiful people into this story as we possibly can. But, you know, narratively, it's hard to get that invested because there's really no stakes. The slime is just so insanely OP. You know, I can't actually tell where the camera is I'm supposed to be looking at. I'm on a new phone. Is this the camera? Is that... Okay, I think this is the camera. Yeah, I've been looking at the wrong place. I'm looking at where the camera is on the other camera. Anyway, yeah, it was hard to get that invested, and, like, the artwork is fine, but not very standout, you know? It just kind of looks like generic fantasy art. I mean, it's fine, but, there's one moment in this that I did really enjoy, which is after, Rimuru, the slime, takes over the, like, he beats these dire wolves, and he becomes the leader of the goblin village. All the goblins are like these tiny little, shitty goblins, who are super weak. Afterwards, he decides to give them all names, just because he thinks it would be more convenient, not realizing that giving a monster a name is a magical act that uses a shitload of magical energy and will evolve them. So he passes out from using so much magic, wakes up days later, and all of the goblins are, like, insanely buff, awesome, like, masculine dudes or hot chicks, and, they're all, like, way more competent and strong. The dire wolves are, like, fucking huge, epic badasses and stuff. That part I thought was funny and clever. It was a good use of the idea of this magical world, but that's really it. Like, everything else is pretty standard. He fights a bunch of stuff, uses a bunch of powers, does a bunch of shit you're expecting him to do, and then it's over. And there is a lot of, like, bonus content, though. Like, there's this whole section in the back where it goes through, like, pages of just the dragon telling its version of events that happened in the book. Like, going through the entire book from the dragon's perspective. Because the dragon is just inside of Rimuru, and it doesn't talk throughout the series. It's just in there, observing, because it was bored, and it's just having fun watching this. And at first, I read the first bit of this, and at first I thought it was kind of funny, like, just seeing the dragon's, like, take on the opening scene. But then once I realized that the entire thing was literally just a dragon going through all the events and, like, summarizing them, I just kind of got bored of it. But, I mean, it's interesting that they even put this in here. I've never seen something like this in a manga release before. Then there's, like, you know, that bonus page I showed you before, the afterward, some bonus illustrations. Like, they really put a lot of love into this particular release. And the light novel itself is coming out in December, but honestly, it's just too much of a light novel adaptation. It's too close to exactly what I was afraid it would be. You know, I picked this up mostly because there was nothing else new at Barnes & Noble that I wanted, and, you know, I've been picking up some subsequent volumes of stuff here and there. I haven't really been, you know, I've still been wanting to do, like, new manga each week. Maybe eventually I'll start covering some, like, volume 2s and stuff like that. But yeah, there was nothing else. So I picked this up, and ultimately, it was exactly what I expected. I was kind of hoping it would be a little bit, I was hoping for something a little more fresh. But I didn't get that. I got what it looked like. And that's neither good nor bad. It's okay. It's average. If it sounds like something you will enjoy, you probably will. If it sounds like something you look at and you go, that sounds like another one of those. Yeah, you're basically right. It's another one of those. So, yeah, that's all. See you next week.